Tonight, picking their president, a nation prepares for potential violence as the US goes to the polls. Winning by a whisker, an unlikely pair become Melbourne Cup champions. Interest rates on hold, but bank predictions mean relief is finally back on our horizon. And social media weaponised, another young life lost after online bullying.
The latest from 7 News with Charlotte Goodlet.
The polls are starting to open across the United States. After a turbulent campaign, voters must now choose between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Miley Hogan is in Pennsylvania. Miley, they campaigned right to the bitter end.
For months, these political rivals have crisscrossed the country trying to convince Americans to pick them. Both hope they've done enough to secure their path to victory. But the campaign season is now over. It is over to the American people to choose their president. 78 million have already made up their minds. Kamala Harris spent her final day in Pennsylvania, a crucial battleground state. A win here, likely a golden ticket to the White House.
And tonight, then we finish as we started, with optimism.
Appearing at various rallies that felt more like concerts at times, the likes of Lady Gaga, Katy Perry and Ricky Martin.
I'm an American woman on the edge.
It's my body and my choice.
These star-studded endorsements may help, but ultimately it's the everyday people who matter most. Her rival spread himself over 3 states, North Carolina, Pennsylvania and Michigan, continuing to stoke fears of voter fraud.
If we win Pennsylvania, not me, if we win Pennsylvania, we win the whole ball of wax. It's over.
Police and city officials all over America reassuring voters that tomorrow's election will be as safe as they can possibly make it.
Anybody who thinks it's time to play militia, F around and find out.
But in some states, they're boarding up windows and erecting giant fences, fearing political violence.
I feel very sad that this the state of things.
There will be no tolerance for violence in our city.
So when will we have a result? It's unlikely to be tomorrow, given there's still no clear favourite. But like everything in this election so far, it's unpredictable.
And 7's live coverage of the US presidential election count begins tomorrow morning at 11:30 Eastern Daylight Time. For other states, check your local guides. An Irish jockey with the voice of an angel has ridden into Melbourne Cup folklore. He did it with the most unlikely of wins aboard rank outsider Knight's Choice. Rochelle Brown is in Melbourne for us tonight. Rochelle, it's always a big day, and this time a bit of a fairy tale win.
The 164th Melbourne Cup was run in perfect conditions with plenty of sunshine and a top of 26 degrees. There was a sellout crowd of 90,000 people and millions watching around Australia and overseas. The $8 million race broadcast to more than 260 countries and territories. Rank outsider Knight's Choice stormed home to win Australia's greatest race. It was a Dream Cup debut for jockey Robbie Dolan, but not his first time in the spotlight. The 28-year-old first shot to prominence in 2022 as a contestant on 7's singing show, The Voice.
I'm with Melbourne Cup jockey Robbie Dolan. How's that sound?
Wow, pinch me. I think I'm dreaming. It's incredible. I can't believe it. I don't even know what to say. This is the biggest race in the world. And to win it, it's just incredible. I've got my family here, my partner Christine, our little baby, Maisie. My dad flew over from Ireland, and now you got me in tears.
It was double delight for co-trainers Sheila Laxon and John Simons. Sheila winning her second cup. Japanese horse Warp Speed finished second. Okita Sushi was third. Off the track, international celebrities made a big comeback to the birdcage. Among them, English actress Elizabeth Hurley, legendary rocker Sir Bob Geldof, and Irish pop icon Ronan Keating.
Only in Australia would the kids get a day off school for a horse race. I think it's just genius. It's brilliant.
It's very nostalgic to be back. I'm not with my sister this year. I'm with my other sister.
Red was the colour of the day and big hats offered a handy fashion accessory for the heat. But of course, all eyes turned to Australia's greatest race by 3 o'clock. Here are the final stages.
It's Akita Sushi. Zardozi a length away on the inside, wearing it down. Akita Sushi grabbed by Zardozi. Knight's Choice is coming through at any old price. And Warp Speed as well. Zardozi grabbed by Knight's Choice and Warp Speed coming at it. Knight's Choice, Warp Speed, they hit the line. It's a photo finish. Knight's Choice, I reckon's one from Warp Speed and a photo.
Melbourne's Cup Week is now halfway through. Oaks Day is next on the calendar.
By the RBA's own prediction, some fresh hope tonight for mortgage holders. A rate cut might come by the middle of next year. Let's go straight to Rob Scott in Canberra tonight. Rob, no surprises when it came to the rate announcement, but a little bit of good news.
Charlotte, in a move that was widely expected, the Reserve Bank opted to keep rates on hold again today, leaving them at 4.35%, which is exactly where they have been since last Melbourne Cup. And that's despite headline inflation last quarter falling to within the bank's target band of between 2 and 3% for the first time in more than 3 years, although that was mainly due to falling petrol prices and federal government electricity bill rebates. Underlying inflation, which is the measure that the Reserve Bank prefers, came in at 3.5%, which is still too high to consider cutting those interest rates. And the bank says it doesn't expect it to drop to the midpoint of its target range until the end of 2026.
Right now, we believe that settings are restrictive and we need to keep rates restrictive for the time being. The board needs to be confident that inflation is moving sustainably towards the target, and we need to see more progress on underlying inflation coming down. We're watching the data closely and we're not ruling anything in or out.
But in a positive sign for borrowers, the Reserve Bank's statement of monetary policy expects rates will gradually start falling to 4.1% by June next year, reaching 3.7% by next December and 3.5% by mid-2026. The government's hoping that that first cut arrives before the federal election, which is due around about April or May. But it's still claiming today's decision as a win.
So what this shows is that we've been able to fight inflation without ignoring risks to growth and without sacrificing the gains that we've made in the labour market. We have struck the right balances by taking the right economic decisions for the right economic reasons. And because of that, we are confident but not complacent about a soft landing in our economy.
Governor Bullock stressing the RBA won't start cutting rates just because countries we often compare ourselves to, such as the UK, the US, Canada and New Zealand, have all started to.
The distraught family of a young boy feared drowned off New South Wales Central Coast says his father did everything he could to rescue his son. Let's bring in Amy Clements here. Amy, despite their best efforts, authorities have suspended the search.
Yes, Charlotte, 11-year-old Leigh Al-Herz still hasn't been found after he was swept into the ocean during a family fishing trip. He was the last one to cross the unpatrolled channel following his father and brothers. The spot, around an hour north of Sydney, is known for its dangerous strong currents. Despite a 3-day search effort involving helicopters, boats, jet skis, police divers and surf lifesavers, there still has been no sign of the little boy. The family has told 7 News that the only thing bringing them comfort is that his 3 brothers survived, their father, who saved them, riddled with grief.
They tried saving everyone. He saved 3. By the time he turned around, he couldn't see Leigh. It was a split second. He hasn't slept, eaten or drank the past more than 24 hours.
The family say they had crossed that channel at least 3 times that day without any problems. Strangers have now rallied behind them, offering accommodation and food, and they have thanked all of the volunteers and emergency services who have selflessly dedicated their time to this search effort. The family say they are struggling to come to terms with what has happened, and the only thing that will bring them closure is finding Leigh. Charlotte, they are calling on the police to extend the search.
A man is fighting for life in hospital after being shot in Melbourne's southeast. Neighbours found the 36-year-old lying on the road last night. Heavily armed police flooded the area in search of the shooter, who is still on the run.
We walked over to see what had happened and we saw the young man laying on the road. He'd been shot through the head, so One eye, one eye was looking at me. He couldn't say anything. He was trying to breathe. It just looked really, really horrific.
He just looked like he'd been knocked out. Yeah, except you could see where the bullet had entered.
It's still not clear why the victim was targeted. Former New South Wales police officer Beau Lamar Condon has switched to taxpayer-funded legal aid. The 29-year-old is accused of murdering TV presenter Jessie Baird and flight attendant Luke Davies. It's alleged he did it with his police-issued firearm. He was expected to enter a plea today. Instead, his lawyer told the court he was withdrawing from the case. The change will cause significant delays that a magistrate described as regrettable. Queensland Police are investigating the death of a Brisbane schoolgirl who took her own life after being bullied online. Part of their focus, a popular social media app. Sarah Greenhalgh explains.
It is heartbreaking and infuriating that yet another family has lost their innocent child due to relentless bullying on social media. Beautiful Ella Catley Crawford was just 12 years old, described as bright and quirky. Earlier this year, mum Julie pulled Ella out of a prestigious girls' school here in Brisbane after her daughter became the victim of a cruel catfishing scheme. But the bullying continued on Snapchat. It is unclear who the perpetrators of that were.
Snapchat was built to enhance relationships between friends, family, and the world.
But contrary to the PR spin, the reality is that this app, so wildly popular with teenagers, often facilitates the complete opposite. Snapchat automatically deletes messages, meaning Ella's mum couldn't see the words that ultimately led her daughter to take her own life. The social media giants know functions like this encourage bad behaviour.
Kids think they can behave without any consequences. And so look what happens. I mean, kids get viciously bullied and they don't feel like they can escape it. It's the way that the platform is built, the design of the platform, that is the problem. That's what needs to be fixed. And so if there's a law that passes that requires the platform to be built to be safe for kids and not harmful and addictive to kids, then their lives would be saved.
On a GoFundMe page, Ella's family has said social media bullying is real. If you ask if we are angry, yes, we are. If you ask if we are sad, absolutely. And if you ask if the system let her down, it did. This catastrophic reality has changed our family's history forever. Police are now investigating Ella's death as money is raised to cover her funeral costs. If you or anyone you know needs help, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14.
The ABC has apologised in federal parliament for a story about Australian soldiers that contained fake gunshots. It came during a grilling in Senate estimates. The extra gunshots were brought to light by Seven's Spotlight program.
Spotlight and Channel 7 that brought to our attention the video editing issues and brought that attention to ABC News. 5 additional sounds of gunshots were inadvertently but inaccurately introduced into footage. Obviously this shouldn't have occurred and we're taking it and have taken it very seriously.
The senators were told an independent review headed by a former ABC staffer found it wasn't done deliberately or to mislead or deceive. Instead, it was an accident of trying to create an effective video sequence. The Prince of Wales took a stroll with Robert Irwin on the second day of his visit to South Africa. The Australian nature lover is an ambassador of Prince William's Earthshot Prize. The annual award supports sustainable projects right around the world. 5 get nearly $2 million each. The pair walked in a group through Signal Hill in Cape Town to highlight the urgent need for biodiversity conservation. You're watching the latest from 7 News. Next, a forgotten war trying to protect the rights of a population. A truck driver charged over a horrific double fatal south of Adelaide. Plus, the Premiership star who is kicking some goals off the field. Those stories and more are still ahead for you tonight here on The Latest. For more than 18 months, the African nation of Sudan has been caught up in a civil war. It's a conflict that's seen thousands killed and millions more displaced. close to half the population is suffering acute hunger. The civilians, very much the victims of what's being described as a forgotten war. Let's bring in Belkis Villa. She's an Associate Director in the Crisis, Conflict and Arms Division of Human Rights Watch. Belkis, you've just come back from Sudan. What did you find while you were there?
The situation in Sudan is really catastrophic. There's a war raging in the country since last April. You have the Sudanese armed forces fighting another armed faction, the Rapid Support Forces. And unfortunately, the reality for civilians in the country is mass killings, mass sexual violence, large-scale rape, looting and pillage. And civilians have really had to bear the brunt of this war. Many civilians have had to flee their homes. Their homes were, in many cases, burnt and destroyed as they were leaving. And so I was in a region of Sudan, the one area where you don't see acute fighting right now. And as a result, hundreds of thousands of displaced people have fled there. And I interviewed people who told me about, their family members being executed by the Rapid Support Forces and mass cases of rape, including sexual slavery.
It sounds like just an awful, awful situation. As we know, there are also wars raging in Gaza and in Ukraine, which are deservedly getting a lot of attention. But why do you think the conflict in Sudan seems to have slipped off a lot of the world's radar?
I think, one very sad reality is that many people think that, Sudan and fighting in Sudan is old news. Many of us who are of a certain age will remember in 2003, 2005, when there was a campaign where many famous people around the world were calling for an end to genocide in Darfur. And so I think this time around, some people feel like, well, what's new? Fighting in Sudan, we remember this. The reality is the violence that you are seeing in Sudan is as acute as it was 20 years ago. This is cyclical violence where there's been complete impunity for the actors involved. And the other thing that one doesn't hear about very much is the famine. You're talking about the country with the most severe famine of any place on the planet right now. I myself witnessed a child die of malnutrition while I was working in a camp there. The situation is really, really dire.
You're in Australia right now. What have you got on your agenda while you're here?
Well, I think it's really important to highlight one particular country that's played a really nasty role in this conflict, and that's the United Arab Emirates. The UAE is one of the main supporters of the Rapid Support Forces. These are the forces that are committing horrific war crimes and crimes against humanity. We've documented them involved in a campaign of ethnic cleansing with mass killings and rape. The UAE is due to sign tomorrow, in fact, an agreement, a joint cooperation agreement, an economic one, with the Australian government. And this is going to be an agreement that sees much closer ties and cooperation between Australia and the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates should be shamed for its role in fueling this conflict and in pouring weapons in to a party that's committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. And I sincerely hope that the Australian government is making demands of the UAE in relation to this agreement, which is, amongst other things, a commitment that it will stop arming the RSF and it will instead focus on trying to bring peace to Sudan.
Belkis Villa, thank you so much. We know you're busy and we thank you for your insight and your time tonight on The Latest.
Thank you.
A truck driver charged over a deadly crash south of Adelaide has been released on bail. Police say a truck collided with 3 cars just after midday yesterday. 2 women were killed, both passengers in one of the vehicles. 7 people, including the truck driver, were also hurt. The 35-year-old faces multiple charges, including causing death by dangerous driving. The operator of a jumping castle is on trial in Tasmania. Rosemary Gamble is accused of workplace safety breaches that killed 6 children 3 years ago. The inflatable was tossed metres into the air by wild winds at an end-of-year school celebration. The court was told the castle was tethered to the ground by only half its anchor points, using pegs that were too small. It was a weaker session for local shares, with the RBA keeping rates on hold. Here's James Tao from ING Bank.
Good evening. There wasn't too much of a reaction from the Aussie market following the RBA's decision to keep rates on hold at 4.35%. That was mostly expected by analysts and economists alike. By the close of today's session, the ASX 200 was down about 32 points or 0.4%. It was in the red for the entirety of the day. One of the worst performers was Domino's Pizza, down about 6% on the news of a leadership change. The Aussie dollar fairly steady as it buys 66 US cents, and investors will now turn their attention to the US election, with some early results expected to come through on Wednesday here in Australia.
Brisbane Lions superstar Will Ashcroft is helping kick goals for the Queensland Children's Hospital Foundation. He's auctioning off his grand final day footy boots, the one-of-a-kind pair worn just once as he led the Lions to their first AFL premiership since 2003.
Auctioning off my game-worn signed boots from the grand final. Yeah, looking to raise some money for the Children's Hospital Foundation. I'm a proud ambassador and understand that it's greater than me and greater than sport.
The auction is live now and open until Friday night. Still to come, all the national weather details. Then a son's final farewell to his mum goes viral. Our final frames are next. You're watching the latest on 7 News. Let's check out Wednesday's weather. Brisbane is going for a top of 31, a partly cloudy day in Sydney, 33 the top for Canberra and Melbourne. Hobart heading for 28, Adelaide partly cloudy and 25. A mild and cloudy one for Perth, Darwin, mostly sunny and 35 degrees. As for the regions, Cooktown and Townsville in the low 30s. Nelson Bay is expecting 27, a very warm day in Ivanhoe, climbing to 42. A possible shower developing in Horsham and Gisborne, both 31. A morning shower or two in Bremer Bay as well. Tom Price is set to reach 37 degrees. Tonight's final frame, a son's final tribute to his mother that has gone viral. Sean Kelly's death notice for mum Jenny has been seen right around the world, picked up by newspapers, magazines and social media. In it, he farewells his wild and wayward mother, remembering her as a woman who grew great dope, never wanted to leave a party and gave up champagne or gin frequently, but never simultaneously. Sean says his mum would likely be mortified by all the unintended attention. His friends say she would have been delighted. Our final frames. And that is the latest for this Tuesday. Thanks for your company. A special US election edition of Sunrise starts from 5:30 tomorrow. And of course, we'll have full coverage throughout the day. But for now, from the 7 News team, good night.
The 7 News app will give you the news you want. Download now.